All right, this is the fourth in-depth video that we made this season. This series goes through a deeper dive into the details of making my frames and my thought behind it. Yeah, this bike is the fourth iteration, I guess. Each time we're changing less things. I know it's kind of gets a little bit less exciting to not have so much new things to talk about, but naturally as I refine the bike more, it's the small details and less major changes that I'm making to it. So we picked these bikes up after the US Open, I guess while we were there at the US Open, from Frank's shop up in Vermont. It was cool to race that race just an hour down the road from where they were made. And we made a couple small changes to it. It's dusty from being ridden a lot at Windrock over the past 2 weeks. Logan's been testing it every day, trying to get the run count up to durability test the frames. My pivot points really haven't changed since the beginning of the season. I've been really happy with the kinematic of the bike. We're just trying to make it more durable and make the quality across each one a little better as we go. And naturally, as Frank makes more of them, he's getting better at making these frames. Like when he does the same weld over and over, he gets good at it. So they're getting better each time. To dive into some of the details that are different on this bike, I guess the big change was the upright tube. That was what we were having trouble with in the middle of the season. A lot of the frames were cracking at the rocker pivot. That tube just sees a lot of forces on this design. The rocker main pivot is pushing forwards and the lower main pivot from the chainstay is pulling backwards. So this tube just sees a lot of stress. And in the past, we had started with a really thick rectangular tube on our first couple of prototypes, and that thing was working really well. We just ran out of it. And that's one thing I didn't consider, was that a lot of this material that we started using, Frank suggested because he had it in his shop. And when he said, "Oh, I don't have any more of this," he probably bought it 20 years ago, and it wasn't something that we could just readily buy. So making more frames as we're trying to keep the process rolling, we kind of ran out of some things. And I guess that's something that I'm learning too, is to think further ahead on that. But we tried to find a tube that was off the shelf that we could use, that was suitable for this application. So yeah, this upright tube is 1.5" by 0.95. Pretty sure it's like 2.3 mil thickness. It's 6061 aluminum. We get them, it's off the shelf. We got it from Xometry. You can just order it and it's ready to go. That was one thing with designing these bikes. Like, I didn't have access to hydroforming and making tubes that were specific to my frame. I tried to just make it out of stuff I could get. At least now, I mean, I guess I could have access to it if I wanted to pay for it, or if I could pay for it. But doing it the way I am, I'm just trying to make the bike as refined as possible, and then down the road, if that's something that's necessary, I can look into it. The idea is to just try to make that tube stronger. We were using a bicycle specific tube from Fairing. That was the first try at something off the shelf that when Frank ran out, and it was definitely not strong enough. We broke them all at Snowshoe. We were racing on a cracked frame, and luckily we were able to stop at Frank's along the way and get one made with the one tube that he had left of the original rectangular tube. So that try didn't work. So far this one, we've been beating the crap out of it, and it's been good, but time will tell if this thing will hold up. It was something that we thought would fit in well to the design and be easy to use, so let's see if it works. Another thing that we did on this bike was improve our gusset design. The fingernail gussets that go on the top and bottom of the top tube and down tube at the head tube junction, we made them a lot longer, cut a bigger oval out of them, so it reduces the stress risers, as they say. So there's not as much of a transfer of thick to thin in one's place. It kind of spreads it out over a longer distance. And then we didn't weld across the top of the tube. That was something that one of the people that was watching our video actually emailed Frank, found his info email on his website, and wrote a message saying like, "Hey, I was watching the video and they had experience making BMX bikes and weren't welding them. They thought that after a bunch of testing, it was better not to. And I talked to a couple other people about it, like Cy at Kotick. I saw him at Fort William and asked him, and he said that on steel bikes, that's definitely something to do. Aluminum being a different material may require a different process, but nonetheless, we tried that on this one, and hopefully it doesn't make as much of a thick to thin quick transition by not welding it, and lets the tube kind of flex under the gusset instead of making that kind of rigid transition. So I think that those gussets will be an improvement. Definitely not something I'm riding down the trail and thinking, wow, this bike feels way better with these gussets, but for durability and improving the process to build them, I think it's something that could help out a lot. We got these links made by Fifth Axis. These are two separate rocker plates. When I was testing the bike with the solid connection, it felt like it was more rigid with that in. I didn't think I would notice it as much as I did, but when I removed it, it felt like the chassis kind of tracked the ground, like the rear wheel would flex more and stay in contact with the ground rather than skip across the top of the surface. So running the link without the brace seemed to be the way to go. We got these links made by Fifth Axis, and they're pretty sweet. They're 70-75. They're super light. They use a similar design to their crank where they cut as much material out using triangles for strength as they could. We're using a 10 mil upper shock bolt because we're still bending shock bolts. I think maybe in the future we're going to need a connection on the link. Hopefully putting it in front of the main pivot on the rocker will make it still have the flex that I want, but take away some of the stress that's on that upper shock bolt. I think them being two independent links creates some scissoring that makes the bolt bend. So hopefully we can, in the future, try that with a connection, but for now, the bike's working good. The 10 mil bolt is super strong, so kind of overkill, but it's taking care of it, and I don't really see much downside. I mean, a 10 mil bolt's a little heavier, but not a huge downside to it. Other than that, some small details. We got the FW logo cut out of the main pivot yoke. Fifth Axis made those for us as well, and kind of looks cool. Got a logo on it. Not much else to talk about. I guess I should have opened with that. We also switched from the rivet clamp-on cable holders back to zip tie ones, but we had these nice ones made. A guy right up next to Frank's shop made them for us. They're double cable holders, so one zip tie, both cables. They're really quiet, and when we're racing, like, you can just clip them off and put them back on really fast. The zip ties never come loose. They never can't over tighten them and clamp your cable too much. Like, I don't know, I just think that for racing, the zip ties just make the most sense. We also took away the clamp that we had at the axle. We had like kind of a little pinch bolt, and super similar to what they have on the Fox 38, just a pinch bolt on one side to kind of make the axle perfectly aligned and then clamp it. But the bolt was something we kept having to check. It came loose sometimes. So on this design, we just removed that, and it's just a standard through axle. We use a off-the-shelf SRAM axle. So it's been working good. Yeah, so it's Dusty from riding at Windrock. Logan just hit 100 runs on Tuesday, and I went out and rode a little bit, and I think we're at 108 now. So we're gonna keep testing this bike and try to get up to, I don't know, 1,000 runs. I think that's, if it passes that, it should be good. Maybe you guys could leave a note in the comment how many runs you think an average person does in a year on a downhill bike. I know it varies depending on the mountain and how long the tracks are, but we're thinking if it can do 1,000 runs at Windrock, it should pass the durability test. And yeah, we're only 100 in, but we'll tag team it and keep going. Well, thanks for watching the video. Like I said, no huge things to talk about today, but we're in the off season now, and I've got a couple cool things in the works that I'm excited to talk about and excited to test this winter and kind of give my thoughts on the details. Some cool stuff with the chassis that I'm having in the works. Just want to say thanks to Worldwide for supporting my program this year. If you want to go on their website, they made a cool landing page with all the parts that I use, and running my own team this year, I was able to choose to build my bike exactly how I wanted. And we made a kind of like a list of everything I use and an explanation I wrote about why I chose it. So it's something cool to check out. If you need to buy new parts, you're probably watching this video, you ride a lot, Worldwide can get you sorted out. And they're a big supporter of my race team, so I wouldn't have been able to do it without them this year. Also thanks to Kogel for being the supporter of these in-depth videos.